Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday, or should we say happy Friday? I hope everyone has had a wonderful week and is looking forward to the weekend because I know I am. So, welcome. So, I see just to send a few shout outs. So, I see Jason, you're here. Kyliezy, so that would be Kyle, right? So, we've got Lissetti, we've got Will. So welcome, guys, welcome. And I'm sure others will drift in as we continue. Today, as promised, so we said we would focus on figurative speech. Okay. So that's figurative language or figures of speech, whichever you would like. Okay. So that's what we're focusing on today. And so you will be familiar with various types of figurative language. So we are focusing on 3 today. Also identify various types of figurative language to decipher the figurative meaning behind it, also decipher between the literal and figurative meanings. Lastly, incorporate figurative language within your own writing. Okay, so just to start off, we look at the difference between literal language and figurative language. So as it says there, literal language is used to make a direct, straightforward statement. Okay, so it's a fact, okay? And figurative language, on the other hand, is used when meaning is suggested to the imagination, perhaps through a picture or comparison. So it varies from ordinary speech, which serves to make language spoken or written more vivid, or rather more vivid or forceful. Okay. So it's meant to create that spatial effect in your speech or in your written piece. So you will be required, if you want to score more marks on creativity, do use figures of speech in your writing as well. All right, so the different types of figures of speech, as we can see there. So as we've said, it's meant to employ language in a non-literal, unusual or imaginative way to create a particular effect. Okay, so we know of a simile, not a similar, simile, metaphor, personification, alliteration, and antithesis. So we will focus on the first 3 today. Okay. And so just these 2 that I would like us to just go over, denotation and connotation. Okay, so a denotation, for example, is in literal usage, we could say the denotation of a word is its primary meaning or what it refers to. It is the explicit or specific meaning commonly given by dictionary, okay? And it is distinguished from suggestions, associations, or connotations. For example, one denotation of light is illumination, okay? And then when we denote, you find that denote is often misused, in fact, for the word show. Denote, in fact, is to signify or mean or to express by symbol or sign to indicate. For example, the word coward denotes an ignoble, craven person. Okay, so what a word denotes is what it literally means. So it is its obvious meaning, okay? So also if we look at connotation, for example, so that one, that would be word or connotations of words or ideas, qualities or references that are generally associated with that word. Okay, so think about it. Ideas, qualities, or references that are associated with the word in addition to its denotation. Okay, for example, connotation of water. So we would say life, or we could connote water as growth or cleansing, or religious rites, for example, if you think of baptism and all that. So yeah, so to connote is basically to qualify, or you show qualities, or it is an idea, okay, that you bring about that particular words. So words will have many different, even opposing connotations. For example, fire has connotations of warmth, life, and energy, but it can also have connotations of destruction, suffering, and violence. So fire also has connotations of love and lust. So writers will use rich or use words, rich in connotations, as you will see in your reading. But all your connotations may not be relevant in a particular context. So if you look at, for example, so in your screen, so we've got red, okay, in each of the following. So there's a piece here by Robert Burns, A Red, Red Rose. So it reads, oh, my love's like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. So in the song, the word red connotes passion, intensity, beauty, not bloodshed or communism, for example. B, for example, we would say our people's flag is deepest red. It shrouded oft our martyred dead. So in this description, red has connotation of glorious sacrifice, okay? So I'm also thinking of our South African flag. So that red connotes blood that was shed, for example. So red can be described as power, socialism in this particular text, and tragic martyrdom. So yeah, so that we, when it comes to connotation, so it would be different. So you can get opposites, opposite explanations to one word. So there is that freedom of expression, if I might put it that way. Okay. So if we look at the examples, or if we compare the notation there, number one says the young of a sheep, the meat of a young sheep, okay, a person, especially a child who is innocent, meek, good, etc. And then a person easily deceived. With your connotation, so we would say it's innocence, goodness, sweetness, unaggressiveness, passive, sacrificial, victim, or peer. Okay, so you see the differences there. So there's literal meaning, and then you see the ideas around that particular word. Okay, so yeah, so that would be the differences. That would be the differences there. Okay. Now we continue. And just with the examples there, for example, so figurative language does suggest more than, as we've said, than the words themselves in order to achieve a spatial meaning. Okay, so you want to have a spatial effect. So a word or phrase is used other than in its literal or plain and ordinary meaning. So it produces a spatial effect. So let's look at the sentences here. So A says, lightning flashed across the sky. So that is literal. But if you look at B, the fan ran towards the Kwaito performers like a flash of lightning. You see, now that one is metaphorical. Second set, I am walking on the ground. So you are literally walking. But if you say I'm walking on air, now that I have heard that I've passed my exam, hopefully you will feel like that one day after you've completed your exam. So that one is metaphorical because it's idiomatic, right? You can't literally walk on air. And the third set, all the bees turned or returned to the hive at evening. So that would be your literal. But B, we say the classroom was hive of activity. Okay, so in each sentence, A, we are using the word or phrase in a literal sense, and there's actual lightning in the sky, as we've said. So I'm actually walking on the ground, and there are real bees flying home. And the third one. And in each sentence, when we look at the bees, or B rather, above we are using the words and phrases figuratively or metaphorically. So the fan running quickly, but not as quickly as lightning. So you can't exactly walk on air either, okay? But we mean that I'm very happy. So there are no bees also in the classroom, unless it's just one unfortunate day where there are literally bees and they chase people out of the classroom. But in literal sense, there are no bees in the sentence in the classroom. The children are just very busy, okay? So in each of the second sentences, we are using a figure of speech, okay? All right. So also something to note, you will see in the coming weeks when we do advertisements. So they make constant use of figures of speech, as you've seen, I'm sure, before. So it is a good idea to read or listen to advertisements, as a way to revise your figures of speech. There are loads. So just when you are even watching TV, just have a listen and see which figures of speech you can pick up. Okay. All right. So the first one now would be our simile, right? So we all know that one, don't we? So simile. So a simile is a direct comparison between two generally unlike things or actions which have a common quality. Okay. So remember when we said figurative speech is all about quality, right? So a simile is usually introduced by words like, as, or than. Other comparatives that you may find would be as, something as, as thin as something, or as if, or so, or as so. So the simile is used for vivid, in order to just get that, sorry, vivid expression. Okay. And a simile, as I've said, must involve figurative speech. So, for example, he's as scared as you are is not a simile. Okay. It's merely a comparative statement. So you need to just be able to tell the difference between just a comparative statement and a simile. So similes are common in everyday speech. So many uses of similes are familiar. So we've seen the same simile many times, as we will read here. So this is called, if you've seen it many times, if you've heard it many times, so we call that a cliched use of language because it's been used often, and it's now it gets to a point where it's lost its impact or that spatial meaning. So these are just a few examples. For example, I'm sure you will recognize these. So the grade 7 who misbehaved badly was sent to the principal's office. He went in like a lion, but came out like a lamb. The second one, my throat is as dry as a bone. He is as dirty as a pig. We know that one, to a point where we would call somebody and say, you pig. And then next one, she is as sly as a fox. The children ran like lightning. Her coat fitted like a glove. The old man's expression was like granite. The young girl is as fair as a lily. Her eyes sparkled like diamonds. So we don't say. In fact, in that song by Rihanna, remember what does it says? Shine bright like a diamond, but the diamond doesn't really shine, but it actually sparkles. So this one is the correct use of it. So so we say her eyes sparkled like diamonds. My son is as slow as a tortoise. And then that thief is as slippery as an eel. Since she's been on diet, she's as thin as a rake. Okay, so these are just a few cliches that are used. And we see more examples here of similes. So the ones from the Bible were fresh when the Bible was written many, many years ago, but now, yeah, so you might think they are a little cliched now, but they were fresh back in the day. But you'll see that other examples here are fresh and interesting. So if you look at the first one, so that's a biblical one. As for man, his days are as grass, as a flower in the field, so he flourisheth. And then if you look at B, but the Litishev road was long and dusty, and Herschel's shoes were thinner than a pauper's soup. So that's by Ernest Kino there. In the Merry Jets of Herschel, Ostropolia. And then the third one, my grandmother sat there under a small lemon tree next to the hut, as big as fate, as forbidding as a mountain, stern as mimosa tree. So that is by Zekia Mpashele from Dawn, 2nd Avenue. So we are going to just focus a bit on the third one, just to illustrate the simile. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about 4 steps, okay, that you need in order to, to determine a figure of speech. And just looking at this text, so the first step would be find the use of a figure of speech, okay? Secondly, identify which figure of speech it is. Thirdly, explain the figure of speech. And lastly, analyze the figure of speech. So number 3 and number 4, pay attention there, okay? So we look at the text, my grandmother sat there under a small lemon tree next to the hut, as big as fate, as forbidding as a mountain, stern as a mimosa tree. Okay, so the step 1 there, for example, so we say find the use of a figure of speech. So the first one there, so as big as fate, right? So it's forbidding as a mountain, stern as a mimosa tree. So we've identified them there. Okay, and then so we found them, and then the second we identify. Okay, so they are all similes, as we can see, as big as fate. Okay, as forbidding as a mountain, as stern as a mimosa tree. Okay, so they're all similes there. Okay, so can you guys explain the figure of speech there? Just explain it. Can you just see if you can explain? If you're asked to explain the figure of speech, how would you do that? Okay, so if you would like to just try that out. So how would you explain a simile in this particular piece? My grandmother sat there under a small lemon tree to the hut. As big as fate, as forbidding as a mountain, stern as a mimosa tree. So how would you explain that one? So anyone? So you can just raise your hand if you want to try it out. So how would you explain this? How would you break it down? Okay, so we will try this. Okay, I will, okay, so I will explain this one and then, yeah, so you can try other ones. Do I see? No, I don't see a hand. No. Okay. So here, the grandmother's size is described as big as fate, right? And fate is a power that some people believe controls everything that happens, right? So she is as forbidding. So where's this now? So there, she is as forbidding. That means she has a severe and unfriendly appearance. Okay. And then so we say it continues. So she is as forbidding as a mountain, and she is as stern. So to be stern, so that means rigorous and unsparing in the treatment of others. So as a mimosa tree, so a mimosa tree, there it is. So that's a small tree with yellow flowers that grows in hot countries. So that's why we say she is as stern as a mimosa tree. So that's how you would be expected to explain the figure of speech. Okay, so it might be a bit tricky to explain, analyze. So just pay attention to the differences. Okay, so analyzing. So if we analyze it, so you'll see, so the comparisons indicate that the grandmother was large, both physically and in her personal impact. She is uninviting in the way, or in the way a mountain can be. Because if you stand, at the foot of the mountain, you look at it, it would be intimidating, especially if you are about to climb it. Okay, and as severe and harsh as well. So to say that she was as big as fate suggests that her impact on others was enormous. Her physical presence was as overwhelming as fate would be if you could confront it. A mountain is hard and fixed, and so the description of the grandmother suggests that she too is fierce and immovable, and her manner is severe and unfriendly. So finally, describes her as a mimosa tree, suggests that she is harsh towards others. Okay, so I'm sure some of us can recognize such grandmothers. Okay, so those would be the 4 steps on how you would analyze, particularly a simile. Okay, so just to sum up, so a simile is a comparison between two things unlike, except in one respect. Okay, it is a statement of likeness between two things, which focuses usually on the one thing they have in common. Okay, so the likeliness is, or the likeness is expressed definitely and directly because the simile is introduced by words of comparison. So to analyze, you must say what is being compared to what and why. Okay, so think about that. So what is being compared to what and why? So that's what you need to have at the back of your mind when you analyze. Okay, so a simile lastly stresses the aspect of the subject with the writer, or that the writer wants to emphasize. So it also enriches by association. So it's also meant to bring across that spatial effect in your writing piece or your written piece. Okay. All righty. We continue to the second figure of speech, and that is a metaphor. Okay, so a metaphor is a figure of speech where one thing is described as if it were something else. Okay, so we see the examples there. The president's speech electrified his audience. Did not our hearts burn within us? Superman is a man of steel. Okay, we know that one. The road was a river of running water. The ships plowed through the waves. My blood boils when I think of what she has done. His iron muscles bulged with strength. He's a dirty pig. All the world's stage. So that is from Shakespeare. Okay, so we're also going to do the same as we did with the simile. So we're going to go through steps that will help you tackle a figure of speech. Okay. So if we look at this line here, so this is from Julius Caesar. So here he is confronted by his conspirators. So he says, in fact, he exclaims, as we can see there, hence wilt thou lift up Olympus. So we're going to look at this line. So the first step there would be to find the use of the figure of speech. Okay. So anyone, can you guys just find it for me? So who can tell me? So which word there is a figure of speech? So you can just type. So can you guess there which word? So find the use of figure of speech there. So which word there can you say is a figure of speech? Anyone? So can you guys identify the word where a figure of speech is contained? Okay. We're rather quiet today. So the word is Olympus. Okay. It's Olympus. And so the second step would be identify which figure of speech it is. So we have been, we've mentioned it. It is a metaphor. So Olympus is a metaphor. Okay, so let's explain that. So here, Caesar closely identifies himself with Olympus. So Olympus is the mountain home of the gods in Greek. Okay, in Greek mythology. So he is saying that in the same way that Olympus cannot be lifted, so he too cannot be moved. What arrogance! So there it is. So we're explaining it there. Okay, so Caesar, as we can see, closely identifies himself. Okay, he identifies himself with Olympus. So just as that mountain cannot be lifted, so he feels it cannot be moved as well. Okay, and the fourth step would be to analyze. Okay, so analyzing the figure of speech there. Okay, so anyone who can, I did give you a hint there. So anyone who would like to try to analyze this, this metaphor, Olympus. So what is Caesar saying there? So remember what we said when you analyze, so things to look for. So you must say what is being, So what exactly, what is it, and why? So why this particular word? Okay, all right. So we can explain it there. So we say Caesar is arrogantly associating himself with the gods there. So he appears to view himself as a god in terms of power and position he holds in Rome. Okay, so you would need a bit of a context as well here to help you analyze. Okay. All right, so here's another one. So that's if just looking at the metaphor here in the poem by Wordsworth. So England is described there as a fen of stagnant water. Okay, so it's seen as or described as a fen of stagnant water. So a fen would be an area of wet flatland, especially in eastern England. Okay, and stagnant would mean water that is not flowing and is often dirty and unhealthy. So you notice there, so that's what you need to notice there. Okay, I see somebody saying something. Ah, Lesedi, I'm only getting this now. I don't know whether my chats are delayed. So all the world's stage is the opening. Oh, okay. Okay, so all the world stage is the opening line of, from a play called As You Like. It's by William Shakespeare. Nice one. Thank you very much. Good job for recognizing that. Yeah. Okay. Right, so where were we? Okay, so we're looking at this now, the poem. So fen of stagnant water. So as I've said there, so we've described the vocabulary. Okay, so the image here implies that England is becoming rotten, okay, and decaying because there is no progress, creativity, or inspiration. Okay. So this rouses feelings of revulsion, okay, as we imagine green, slimy, smelly water that should normally be sparkling, right? So the image appeals to our sense of smell and sight because of the concrete quality of the image. So the idea is then conveyed. So yeah, so what we notice about the metaphor here would be a concrete picture that is given, right? Feelings that are aroused, and the idea, as I've said, that is conveyed. So that is the main reason why then we would have, or just, yeah, use the metaphors. Okay. So another thing to note about the metaphor is that it's often found in the action of a sentence. Okay. So you need to just look carefully in the following examples here. Okay. Yeah, so if you look at the examples here, so if you look at the metaphor, okay, so just never mind the simile for now, but if you look at 1.2, the hungry beggar wolfed his food down. Okay, the crowd thundered their applause. Our company isn't nearly as pleasant to work for now than Lucifer has taken over. So that's a metaphor as well. Okay, so now here we are comparing, okay, the simile, or you just want to see the differences, just the differences between the simile and a metaphor. So 1.1, so all your first sentences are simile there. The Assyrian came down like the wolf on the fold. You see, like the wolf. So that's a simile, and we can see the metaphor there. The hungry beggar wolf is foot down. 2.1, the roof collapsed with a roar like thunder. Okay, so remember with a simile, that's always a simple one, right, to spot, isn't it? So you must just look for like and as, but just remember to ensure that it's not a comparative statement that you see. And then 3.1, he is as proud as Lucifer. That's a simile. And then we see the metaphor there. Our company isn't nearly as pleasant to work for as Lucifer has taken over, implying that the boss is a devil, basically. 4.1, she is as light as a feather. So that's a simile. And second one, the feathery touch of her fingers surprised me. So that would be the metaphor. Fifth, she performs like a star in our team. And then a metaphor would be she is the star of the team. See the difference there. And the last set, words came out of him like a river. So that would be a simile, whereas the metaphor would be torrents of eloquence poured from the speaker. So we see many would be the verbs there. But also, if you look at three or statements, statement three, a person is said to be Lucifer, there to describe just how devilish and probably harsh he is. Okay, so just something to remember. Okay, you need to use these metaphors with care. Okay, so if more than one metaphor is used to make a continuing series of comparison, so these must not contradict. So we're going to look at just a few examples there where the metaphors are mixed, but they don't quite agree with each other. So you might lose the meaning if you mix your metaphors, but they don't go together. Okay. So if we look at just the examples now for mixed metaphor, he embarked on a field of crime. So one embarks on a ship, not a field, you see. So you've got to really think about it as well in a literal sense as well, to see whether the metaphors agree with one another. Or the second one, the milk of human kindness burned within him. So milk in this case, can't really burn. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Lesedi there. So I see you've been binging on Netflix. So Lesedi says Lucifer is also a series from Netflix. You binge on Netflix. So less Netflix and more lockdown school, please. Okay. All right. So the third one there would be he is so out of his depth in the debate that he was left high and dry. Okay, so if we look at that one, to be out of your depth is to be in water that is too deep for you to stand without it's coming over your head. So to be left high and dry means to be stranded and helpless. But if it is out of his depth, or if he's out of his depth, then he's deeply in water. So he can't be high and dry out of the water. So you see, so it doesn't quite agree if you take a closer, or the metaphors don't quite agree with each other. So you might lose the meaning so if you are trying to get a point across. So you will produce a ridiculous mixed metaphor if when you are comparing one thing with another metaphor, you suddenly switch the comparison to a third thing before completing the first comparison. So just make sure that there is a consistency there. Okay, but if you, for example, want to create a comic effect, okay, so you may mix the metaphors to, for example, develop characterization, for that comic effect. So so just be clever and be very careful when you use when you mix your metaphors. Okay, so just to sum up now on the metaphor. So we said that a metaphor is a description of one thing as if it were something else, right? So to analyze a metaphor, you must say what is being described as what and why. So what is being described as what and why. Okay. And then in your writing, so you are advised to try and use metaphors rather than similes. Okay. So metaphors are more difficult to write, but they have more effect. Plus, I'm thinking you'll probably get more marks. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, I get your point, Lesedi. So you don't watch Netflix. Okay, good. All right. Lovely. Okay, so I hope that was all clear. So I would like us just to do, we have 6 minutes, just a short exercise, a very short one. Okay, so we're going to practice. So you need to analyze the effectiveness of the leaves feathered the sky. Okay, and then at night, our slamming voices, okay, must seem loud. Okay, so yeah, so can we just analyze the effectiveness of these two sentences there? So anyone would like to try? So think of the steps that we have, that we have gone through. So anyone would like to try here? You can just type. So the leaves feathered the sky. So we need to identify the figure of speech there. Find it first, identify it, explain it, and analyze. So anyone would like to try there? Okay, all right. Okay, so we will, okay, so for the sake of time then, so we will, so I will just give this answer. So in the first one, the leaves feathered the sky. So the leaves feathered the sky. So this is a metaphor, right? So in the metaphor, the leaves are described as feathers. So the writer appeals to our senses of sight, touch, and hearing here. So we see the shape of the leaves pointed as feathers and having veins. Okay. So we imagine the soft, fluttery touch of the leaves. We hear the soft sighing of the leaves. That's the metaphor is particularly effective because it evokes a complex response in the reader. We see how rich, how rich just one very short sentence can be. Okay, so I see a response there. No, I can't see it now. Okay, so my chats are just playing with me here. Okay, so they will probably show after, which will not help us. Okay, the second one, at night, our slamming voices must be loud. So there, so it's the metaphor. It describes the voices as if they were doors. Okay, I see chats coming, but I don't, I'm not sure. I don't see them. So we're just going to wrap up quickly because we are, so we need to rush. We only have 3 minutes left. So the second one, the metaphor describes the voices as if they were doors, so capable of slamming, and so making a loud, abrupt sound. So the word slamming suggests a sharp and echoing, banging noise, right? So in the same way, the people's voices create an intense noise in contrast with the quietness of night. So so it can be quite a challenge to explain these figures of speech, but you need to get into the habit of doing that. Okay, so maybe we can just try task 2. Which sentence contains a metaphor? So this would be a simple one. So if you could just shout, or just give me an answer. So which statement contains a metaphor? First one, the minutes crept slowly. The lion crept towards its prey. Is it 1.1 or 1.2? So just have a look at the sentences for 1 minute, and then you can write your answer. So the plane flies very high overhead. 2.2, whenever something goes wrong, the learner flies to the teacher. So anyone who can tell us which one is a metaphor? The little child loves to hammer on his drum. The governing body needs to hammer out the religious policy. And then we've got when her boyfriend left her, my sister was in floods of tears. In the Bible, we read about Noah who survived the flood that God sent. So if we look at that, so I'll give the answers there because I'm not seeing anything. So I'm not sure whether it's my whether it's me. So the first one, it would be 1.1, right? The minutes crept slowly. So crept. The plane flies very high overhead. That's literal. Whenever something goes wrong, the learner flies to the teacher. So that is a metaphor, flies to the teacher. 3.1. So our metaphor there would be the child. Okay, so let's see, the governing body needs to hammer out the religious policy for the school. And lastly, a metaphor would be in 4.1. When her boyfriend left her, my sister was in floods of tears. Okay, so unfortunately, I am going to have to leave you like the boyfriend. Hopefully, you will not be in floods of tears. So we have come to the end of the session. So we will continue. Remember, we still have more days. We will continue on, we will continue with the rest. And you are also more than welcome to download the rest of the lesson. Okay, so it will be on the website. So you're more than welcome to download the rest of it. Okay, don't forget to tag us on the socials. Okay, as you hopefully are continuing to do, and have a safe and blessed weekend, guys. And we will tune in again, same time, same place on Monday. So stay blessed.